Wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Okay, I've decided this is going to be a complete separate video other than, or away from the other ship that I'm building, so that I can keep everything about this tiny Shenzhou. Hold me closer, tiny Shenzhou. This tiny Shenzhou model complete unto itself, and it will be its own video. And I shan't think that it will take any length of time to do. This is what I am calling a potato chip model. And why would you say it's a potato chip model? Any of you who have ever opened a bag of potato chips, if you've opened a bag of potato chips, you will know the phenomenon of the potato chip model. Look at this box. Now, this box is a standard size box that Polar Lights uses for a lot of their 1,000 scale kits and smallers. Anyway, I'm trying to close it up with one hand. It's a beautifully printed box. It's got all your decal layouts. It's full color. It's beautiful. It's got a goof on it that's going to be corrected. There's a goof on it that, as far as decals, it shows the Discovery decals, not the Shenzhou decals, as an example. But the diagrams are right. It's just that the example of the decals is wrong. But this is your tiny box. And it's another one of these cases where the illustration is much, much larger than the actual kit. But when I opened this up, the model took up about that much space. It was like 3 very flat trees or sprues or runners or whatever you want to call them. They're interchangeable terms. They really are. It was sitting in the bottom like this, and basically came up to about this high. They could have made this box easily half its height, and still, I mean, may have saved on some paper, but that's me. It's what I call a potato chip model, because the inside of the box is mostly air. But once you get into the kit itself, you realize that the tiny Shenzhou is in fact the tiny Shenzhou. Not all that difficult to make. I have to decide whether it is worth lighting, because the only feasible thing to light in it is the bridge module. You could light that. You could light the impulse engines in the back. You could light those, and one tiny bulb would do it. There's a clear part that goes out to this deflector. I don't know how feasible that would be to light, because if you look here, you'll see some sort of pattern of clear parts there that I don't know if that would be at all feasible to replicate on this tiny, tiny part. And then you have the nacelles, which have a clear part in them like Discovery did. And, you know, it looks like you could light, you know, putting a single light up to it, like I did on my Discovery. And I'm certainly going to try it to see how feasible it is. But the connection is, I'm going to have to, you know, basically glue the wiring down to the outside of the connection and hide it that way. It's just not, there's no gap to run the wiring through. It's when you get a piece that is the top and the bottom, there's no way, unless you channel out for wiring, there's no way to conceal it. So we're going to have to find out whether that's going to be worth doing or not. And then it all sits together like, kind of sits together like that. And you're done. And then it's just a matter of putting the wallpaper on. So let me pull out a bulb, a tiny, tiny SM LED, see what kind of lighting we can distribute in the nacelle to see whether it's worth trying to light up this puppy. Okay, back here on the tiny Shenzhou. Of course, nothing ever goes easily. I was getting out the paint to do a light blocking / pre-shading version of the tiny parts here, and I spilled my black paint, and it went all over everywhere, including the decal sheet, which I quickly had to wipe off. And you can still see some remnants down there in the instructions, but hopefully I got most of the graphics cleaned off. I didn't want to, it was a delicate balance, because I didn't want to oversaturate the sheets and run the risk of the decals lifting off long before I was ready to use them, and still getting them clean. So it was an interesting moment there for a while. But I've got excuse me, I've got these parts pre-shaded and pre-light blocked, and I'm going to let them sit. Okay, now the parts for the USS Shenzhou have been covered with a nice coating of gunmetal, and I'm going to let this sit overnight. And this is as far as this is going to go. It's nicely light blocked. I mean, you can. It's pretty good on the light blocking. I may hit the inside of that just one more time with the black, but gonna let this sit. This is just a base for the decaling that goes over top of it, but I think this is a nice body, a nice undercoating. So now I can think about the wee bulbs that I plan on putting in, but getting this to a nice workable base, a good foundation for the rest of the work. Welcome back. It is Wednesday. It's another busy day at the ye old Starship building facility, and I'm working on the tiny Shenzhou, and I'm trying to figure the best way to channel lighting. No sense building a kit this small if you're not going to try to light it. I mean, there's nothing else really going on with it. It's all decals for wallpaper, for painting, so you got to do something special with it. You might as well try to light it. But I have ascertained, just by doing the old, test fitting and all of that, that there's no way on God's green earth that you can hide the wiring, because it is, the parts of the ship are so thin, and where it has to come in and go out of, you're going to have exposed wiring. So the best thing I can do is minimize that, try to camouflage that, and then wallpaper over it. Like so many other mistakes in life, you just have to wallpaper over them. So what I've done first is channeled out. Yesterday I put a nice coat of the gunmetal on all of the outer surfaces, and I've blacked the inside. I've channeled that open a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit bigger than just the natural kit. Maybe I can do this so that you can, let me flip the light on here so that you can see. Okay, so I have channeled that open just a little bit wider than is on the natural part, and some of that is flash from the kit part, because it's awfully hard to get in there and clean it out. But that's what I did. I just took an X-Acto and I just kind of carved that open a little bit more to make it a little bit more pronounced. And also I needed to sand this up and rough it up. This is the insert. Don't know whether you can tell there. I opened those channels. Well, let me see if I can get the other one's kind of stuck in an engine, so let me pull it out. Anyway, on the, I can do this. There you go. Pointing device. On the other part, you would notice that these are a little bit more squared off. And what I've done is I've cut this angle just by nipping these little corners off here. I've created more of an angle so that they will sit deeper into the channels that they're meant to go into. So by doing that, that allows me to kind of really push it in there and make sure that it is seated, so that when you do that, there you go, that you get the full edge of lighting out of it. And now the next thing to do is to position the red SM LED for optimal light dispersal. Boy, that sounded official. I had thought of putting 2 SM LEDs in here, one towards the front and then one towards the middle there. But then I realized that would be twice as many of the magnet wire bundles that I would try to have to disguise and otherwise deal with, and I'm trying to see if there's a more economical way to do that. And I think by putting one bulb in the center, I can achieve what I need to achieve. Looks something like that. And again, the old thing about LEDs in the camera, it tends to centralize it. But I want to I'm thinking that there's a point right about, you see where, not where am I, come on, let me flip it around. See where that circle is? Let me see if I can point it out. There is a circle here that is not affiliated with any of the, this circle here is a pass through for the pin, and so is that, but there is like a sink circle right here that I think if I can chop that out or drill a hole there and bury the SMLED into it, then it will act as a light channel. So let's see what kind of trouble I can get into there. Okay, I'm back, or I'm not back at work, I'm still at work on this USS Shenzhou lighting, and this thing is fighting me every inch of the way. The tolerances are so tight, the room in here is so tight that I have to fight for every square nanometer to get room in here, to get these two halves to mate up. And I've gotten to the point now where it's personal. I'm gonna do it whether it kills me or not. It's gonna be a question of squeezing that all together, and then filling that seam in, and then painting over it, and then wallpapering. So, but it's hopefully gonna. I ended up doing 2 of them because this area right here is so fragile that it's gonna snap. And once that snaps, you lose all light conductivity from that point back. So you have to start another tiny bulb to carry it all the rest of the way back. Which means, yes, I've got 2 wires coming out. And it's going to be tougher to doubly tough to camouflage. But I will not give up on this thing yet. I got to tell you, after weeks and weeks and weeks of work on the big Enterprise, where, I was dealing with large pieces and fat wires and lots of room. This is trying my patience more than it really should have a right to. Okay, I'm just getting the other nacelle ready to light up and glue together. Now, hopefully it won't be as long or as fraught with frustration as the first one. I just have to go back in and kind of remember what I did to the other one and kind of pre-clean and pre-cut some of these things that I ended up trimming out as I went on the other one. As far as getting everything to fit, I would go in and then trim things out a little bit and fit them again and trim them out a little bit. I think now that I know what I'm going to have to do, I can go ahead and just do all of that right off the bat and not have to pussyfoot around with it. Things like I need to cut out both of these pins. I know that now. I didn't know that at the time when I was doing the first one. So hopefully it'll be less stress on the plastic if I just go ahead and do that now. Things like that. I've got this wire out of those engines. That's the bit I'm going to have to camouflage. It's coming up through there. There's absolutely no tolerances for even magnet wire, so I'm having to cut little grooves and channels for everywhere that I'm chasing the wiring. My goal is to get these things wired up through this roll bar and the pylons, and so that I can attach it all up through the bottom of this at one time. We'll see. But now I'm going to go ahead and try to get the second nacelle lit. Okay, well, this has been a fun day of tedious, tiny lighting. Here's where we're at. I've got this bottom half, for lack of a better term. I gotta stop saying that, I'm sorry. I got this bottom half drying. It's wired. I got one little squeaky joint here that needs to be glued. And now I'm ready to go to the top half. And in the top half, I need a white light here that's going to light up the low slung bridge. I need 2 reds that are going to light up the impulse engines here, and then I need a white that's also going to shine out through there. So really a white kind of in this area might do both, but the more I look at it, I might have to isolate them and keep them separate. So that'll be the next bits that I get ready to glue down. Okay, this is where I'm going to pack it in for the day. I've been fiddling with these tiny lights all day and it's wearing me down. So there you go. There's the bridge light and the, I guess, deflector light and impulse engines. And there's the sled with the warp engines on it. So I think we've done a lot, even though it's in a tiny amount of real estate. We've got a lot done today. Morning, it's another day. It's another day of work. Hopefully we are going to get a lot done today. It is Thursday. And this may look like I'm jumping ahead a little bit because the ship is still in pieces. Why are you digging out the decals? Well, because of the unique design of this ship, some of the decaling really would be better off to be done now than waiting until the end, because the way that, like I said, the way the ship is designed, these parts here fit over, pardon the wiring, fit like that. So getting the wire, or getting the decaling done on the bottom of the saucer and the top of the pylon assembly now, while they're individual, would be a lot easier than waiting until it's all put together and you're trying to slide decals into place. So I'm not going to do all of the decaling, obviously, but I want to get the decaling done in this particular area so that I can join these parts and finish up the wiring. It's going quickly, but you know, I'm not going to rush through it. I just want to take my time and see how these are going to work, because they're round 2 decals, and you know my history with round 2 decals, so I am hoping for the best. Okay, these are going down pretty nicely, I say with some surprise, and then again you have the surprise of the white windows. Again, these are printed on white paper, so give yourself a wide berth when you're cutting out the decals, that you don't accidentally cut into the carrier film, because you never know, you may be chopping off a window. But these are going down quite nicely. I wish now that I had maybe painted the ship a little bit lighter instead of giving it the gunmetal base, but I'm still seeing a lot of this light detail, but a lot of the darker stuff is just getting plain lost in the background color. So lesson learned there. If I ever to do it another one, I would base coat it a little bit lighter. But that's going to do. They were pretty careful about the decals not going over where the overlaps are, so I need to see if there's any decals for this area. But this seems to be, this area here, this U shape seems to be fairly clear of them, which would match what's happening there. So let me see if there are anything that there is anything that goes there. Okay, it turns out there were 2 more, one here and one here. That these ones I can wait till the rest of the kit is built to put on, and certainly the whole top I can wait. But now I need to check what areas along this construction I can decal. Okay, I'm at the point now where I need to let these decals dry, let them set before I go any further with the combining of parts, so it's a good time to take a mid-morning break. Okay, I've got the top section glued down to the warp nacelles, and I've got the wires pulled up through and ready to do some wiring there. But I gotta tell you, it's immediately going to be put on hold because mail call has come, and that's the replacement board from Ralph, and this is the, oh, hide my lights, my address here. Evans Design. This is Model Train Software. These are my SM LEDs and some more lighting stuff that I found out about it at Nanuga Nets, about some other products that they have that I'm itching to try out. But again, it's Thursday. It was ordered on Monday. It's already here. Can't beat that kind of service. You just can't beat it with a stick. But real excited to get the brains replaced on the Big E. Okay, there you go. I've got the top glued down, nailed down, otherwise fixed, and I've got the lights on. Now I've got some light leakage, especially back here along the impulse engines. So I need to touch those up with a little bit of silverish paint, gunmetal paint, because once I put the decals over them, I won't be able to do any sort of light blocking after that. The decals are kind of where it's done, but notice we've got our lights going on in here. We've got our forward light. If I pull this up here, you can see the light on the bridge underneath. Those look pretty good. Those warp engines look pretty good. So I'm ready to, like I said, do a little bit of final light blocking, and then we will be decaling the top. Hello and welcome, kids. It's Friday, last work day of the week, and we're going to finish not one but two projects today, but I am keeping them separate from each other. So let's get to the tiny Shenzhou. Tiny Shenzhou, I've got the last of the decals on. I've got a couple little detaily ones, and then the markings to put on, but majority of the wallpaper is down. And you know, if I hadn't painted the ship so dark, you'd actually be able to see more of them. I'm giving an estimate of a good 60% of the detail is lost because I painted it too dark to start with. And of course, this will look better once I put a flat coat on it. But now, right for this moment, I am working on the base because I want it off and drying. And you know, a while ago, my sister gave me these. She gets flea collars for her cat. And, you know, nice little tins. She thinks of me when she sees things like this and says, can you use this for anything? Which is basically her way of saying, I don't want this crap in my house anymore, and can I give it to you? And I take it because, you know, I can find uses for all kinds of neat little things. Now, I can sometimes take these and put screws in them, or wire, you know, switches or wires or LEDs or whatever. But it also makes a nice little base. So what I'm going to do is, because I can open it up and change the battery, things like that. So I'm going to do basically like that. Stick this on here, paint it up, put a switch right here, and there you go, you've got a base. So what I need to do now is glue this down, epoxy it down so that I can give it a good primer coat, and then, you know, a finished coat. And it's one of these things where the base is going to end up being, you know, bigger than the ship, but what can you say? It's a tiny Shenzhou. So let's get some epoxy on here because I'm joining plastic to metal. That's probably the best glue to use. And what I'm going to do is lather it on in the side here, and then quick do that, and then let it seep into the crack and glue. So let's do that. Alrighty, I'm getting ready to finish up the base for the wee Shenzhou and the tiny Shenzhou. It's a wee Discovery, but it's a tiny Shenzhou. And I brought the Discovery out just to get that extra bit of encouragement and camaraderie so that I can get this on the base and get it buttoned up. Now, the last thing I need to do is to glue it to the post, bring the wire down, and wire up the switch and the battery. So let's go ahead and get that amount done. And there you go. There's my tiny Shenzhou. Strictly by accident, putting it up on this base brought it to the same height as the Discovery. If not, it would have been sitting something like this, where it would have sat a little bit lower than the Discovery. Not a bad little kit. If it weren't for my stupid color choice, you might be able to see a lot more of the detail, but since I painted it too dark, you don't see a lot of that. And I don't know, the box recommended gunmetal, but apparently they didn't mean it. So there you go. The lighting was actually went a little bit easier than I thought it would. Now, of course, not on the impulse or the warp engines because of that long, skinny shape of them. That was reminiscent of the long, skinny shape on the Discovery. But even the Discovery managed to carry the light piping a little bit further back without having to resort to a second bulb, where I had to put a second bulb in there to continue the light. And then you've got the lighting on the underslung bridge and behind the deflector dish. I am at a bit of a loss to understand why they made the deflector dish out of clear, because there was no way in God's green earth you were going to be able to light that thing. And they didn't put a decal in the kit to give you the detailing that goes on in that deflector dish. If you look at the top of the box, you can see that it has a wonderful design there. but none of that is in the details or in the decals. So, but I'm not surprised that, the decals on the round two, always an iffy subject. Again, with the white windows on the white backing paper, it does make a bit of a head scratcher to make sure that you are, when you're cutting them off of the sheet, that you cut the whole sheet correctly. But there you go. A nice addition to the Star Trek Discovery line, the tiny Shenzhou. One last jab at the Shenzhou before I shut up about it, and that is I can't for the life of me figure out why the windows are all white on the decals, and that's well and good. Why aren't they white in the illustration, the box art? Well, I mean, what changed between the box art and the decal sheet to make sure that they weren't gonna, I mean, somebody wasn't talking to somebody else when they could have easily have either made all of the decals match the box art, or make the box art match the decals, or made the windows black on the decals, or, do something interesting like, black out some of them and make some of them white and some of them black. That would have been interesting.